the stories we have today. We're giving you the perfect healthy start. You know health is a priority on the show with us here. My name's Toya Singh. Let's take you through all the stories today. First, your achy, breaky heart. We are going to tell you how to take better care of your heart, the lipid lowdown. So what do test results mean for our health? There's a new set of recommendations that the Cardiology Society of India has come out with. Why are those recommendations of importance? Why do you need to pay attention? And why are these recommendations different from the rest of the world's? We're going to take a look at all of this on the show. And we have a special person of interest on the show today. He is someone who interviews celebrities, guests, and he brings them on every single sensitive topic. He specializes in interviewing men and asking them about their hearts, matters that are close to their hearts. This is Nikhil Taneja joining us on TBC. He talks about the second season of his show, Be a Man Yaar. And next, the beautiful visuals. You can see them on your screens right now. Coming in from Kashmir at this time of the year, the lavender revolution that's going on as purple patches bring the scent of success. Why farmers are turning to lavender and what it means. We'll take a deeper dive with the ground report. Lastly, of course, you've seen the visuals all weekend on your feeds, but we bring you a breakdown of Anant Ambani and Radika Merchant's wedding ceremonies that we saw take place as they tied the knot in a grand style. We'll show you a lowdown of every single thing that took place. Our first story is a particularly important one. We begin the broadcast with a hearty conversation, one that really should not be missed. Grab your papers and pens for this next segment. We're going to have a number of specialists here who are going to tell us how to keep your heart healthy. They're going to give us all the tips. But today we're not just looking at diet. We're understanding how to get all of the parameters, the data you need to understand how healthy your heart is and how to make it healthier. We're talking about lipid testing. We're cracking open the facts, everything you need to know, what lipids even are, why our body needs them, why it's crucial to keep them in check regularly, and most importantly, the new guidelines that have just come out. But before we go ahead, I just want to give you this base of information that our research team has found. The highest number of cardiovascular diseases in the world occur in China, and right after that, you have India. In India, half of all heart attacks occur to people under the age of 50. I'm going to repeat that. If you're under the age of 50, that's actually half of the total number of heart attacks that our country sees. Last week, the Cardiology Society of India, we'll refer to them as CSI through the show, they released India's first guidelines on how you need to get tested when it comes to your lipid data. You're going to hear a term we'll use a lot through the show. It's the term dyslipidemia. It's the term that's used to describe abnormal lipid levels in your bloodstream. It's a predictor of different kinds of heart ailments, and it's known as a silent killer. In India itself, the rates are particularly high. You, in fact, are supposed to have higher rates than even diabetes. And that's part of why CSI has now come up with new guidelines. Earlier, we used to operate on European standards, us along with a number of other countries. But the CSI found that there was a need for India-specific data. Over the last few decades, they felt there's this need. Now they've finally come up with guidelines. And if we had to give you a summary, though we're going to speak to experts in just a second, if we had to give you a summary, essentially these new guidelines are testing, and they're saying you need to more aggressively test, more ambitiously test, so you need to start younger than before. They're saying start at the age of 18. They've said set up a yearly reminder, and they're just far, far more aggressive in terms of how often you need to do this. So, how are we going to go ahead and bring you the TBC breakdown? First, we've got a top cardiologist on the show to shed more light on this entire topic. So, how does testing work? How can you go about it? We have Dr. Sanjeev Gera. He's the director and the HOD, the head of Department of Cardiology at Fortis Noida. He's with us on the show. Sir, good morning. Welcome to TBC. Thank you for joining us bright and early on the show. Sir, let's just ask you first, because we really want to break it down for our audiences. What is a lipid, sir?
Basically, like other blood tests, it is also a blood test. It is a panel of tests. The
Okay,
lipid profile includes four types of cholesterol test actually.
okay.
So in our blood, we have around four types of cholesterol. Like one is total cholesterol, then other is LDL cholesterol, which is also called a bad cholesterol. Then other is another one is HDL. H means high, which should ideally be high. It is called good cholesterol, HDL, and then triglycerides. So these are four types of basically molecules you can say in the blood, which constitute a cholesterol test or a lipid profile test. What we call lipid means fat. So basically, assessment of fats in your blood is called a lipid profile test. And there are two types of lipid profile test. One is basic lipid profile test, and other one is an extended lipid profile test. So extended lipid profile test, it includes some other additional things like lipoprotein A, which is actually a genetical marker for high cholesterol or heart disease. Then other one is apolipoproteins like
Right.
ApoB, apolipoprotein A. So some added additional modified tests to see whether a person is at a higher risk of heart disease or not.
Doctor, it's a complicated topic and we're giving our TBC family a lot of data very early in the morning. So we're going to ask some simple questions too. You just said good cholesterol and bad cholesterol, if I heard you correctly. Why are certain cholesterols bad and good?
So the bad cholesterol, which ideally should be low, it is called LDL. So LDL is a lethal cholesterol. What happens whenever there is high LDL molecules in your blood, and if they get oxidized by any insult like very high blood pressure, very high sugars, smoking, pollution, pesticides, and so many unknown factors. If that LDL cholesterol molecule gets oxidized, then what happens? It starts getting deposited in your vessels, especially heart vessels, leg vessels, and brain vessels. That can cause buildup of blockages and ultimately heart attacks, strokes, and peripheral arterial disease when you have pain in walking. Whenever you walk, there is a pain. So this means there is some cholesterol deposition in legs also. So that is why LDL is called a bad cholesterol because it gives you disease. The other one is HDL, which is actually counteracting the effects of LDL. So what HDL does, HDL is a good cholesterol. Ideally, it should be high. H means high. What it does, it is basically a scavenger molecule. So it takes away the bad cholesterol from the blood and just it takes it into the liver where it gets degenerated. So it's called a good cholesterol because it is removing bad cholesterol from the blood. So that is why these two parameters are very important whenever we assess the heart disease risk in any person.
Okay, doctor, can we ask you, we shared data that was quite severe with our audiences right now, and it essentially points to the fact that Indians are more susceptible to all of these issues than others. But why is that?
So basically, there are a few things which makes us more susceptible. Like we have genetical predisposition.
Okay.
Genetical predisposition means we have more incidence of heart disease. Like we have when we talk about in terms of cholesterol, so we have high bad cholesterol and low good cholesterol. So whenever you see a lipid profile test in any Indian, so our good cholesterol values are always less, below 30, below 35 even. Ideally, it should be more than 40. And then other thing is that we are genetically predisposed because our arteries are smaller than Western population, so
Oh,
they are more likely to get blocked if you have high bad cholesterol, if you have sugar. The third thing is that we eat a very high carb rich diet. Our diet is more of carbohydrates, especially refined carbohydrates. Very less of fruits, very less of vegetables. We hardly eat fruits every day. It is said that you have to have 2 to 3 servings of fruit and 2 to 3
sure,
servings of
sure.
vegetables every day. And the vegetables should not be overcooked. What we do, we just burn our vegetables. The other thing is that we have high blood pressure, and then we have there is very less physical activity. We are not just working, we are not just walking. So that makes us Indians more predisposed to heart disease, especially more of pre-diabetes. Lot of sweets, lot of sugars in our diets, and lot of genetical predisposition for diabetes. All these things, and then high stress levels. So all these things actually making us more prone to heart disease.
Tell us, Dr. Gira, are we essentially saying that, look, because I just want the messaging to our family, our TBC, the viewers, to be very clear. You're saying that we're all genetically predisposed, and the two ways to take care of it are healthy eating and exercise, and that's it.
we are genetically predisposed to have high bad cholesterol, low good cholesterol. And there was one study which showed that if you lose weight by around 10 kgs, then you can increase your SDL cholesterol by 5 points.
Wow.
So
Okay.
weight also has an effect. If you are obese, though these people have low good cholesterol and high bad cholesterol. So weight also matters, lifestyle also matters, along with our genetical predisposition. So if you check lipid profile, or when I see lipid profile in our patients in India, so good cholesterol is almost on lower side. Very few people they have very high good cholesterol. So that is why it makes us more prone for heart disease.
Doctor, just tell us, because the reason we decided to do this story was because the Cardiology Society of India has come out with new recommendations. How are these, and this is the first time you have India-specific recommendations, how are they different from what the country was operating with all of these years?
So basically, what they have done, Lipid Association of India, they have categorized patients into four categories, like low risk category, moderate risk, high risk, and very high risk.
Okay,
So there are a set of parameters which define whether this patient goes into this category and that category.
sure.
So if you have diabetes, or if you have a smoker, if you are a smoker, if you have family history of heart disease, heart attack, or any procedure or any stroke, then you are into very high risk category. Then the threshold for lowering of bad cholesterol is ideally it should be less than 50. They say it should be less than 50. Earlier it was less than 100. In a diabetic patient, only diabetes, then the LDL cholesterol, the bad cholesterol should be less than 70. So the guidelines initially they were a bit more flexible, but last decade when we have witnessed that there are a lot of premature deaths, a lot of
Right.
premature heart attacks, younger people coming to us with every type of cardiovascular disease, say it like heart attacks or strokes or peripheral artery disease, then they decided, and it is based on data actually. So they have now recommended that the bad cholesterol, the LDL cholesterol should ideally be less than 50. The lower the better. And good cholesterol should be more than 40 in males and more than 50 in females. That is the guideline actually.
Doctor, before we let you go, one last question for you. For everyone watching right now, if you could almost speak to all of us who are watching it in our living rooms early in the morning, what's the biggest change you want to see India make?
The single biggest thing change is basically lifestyle modification. We should be more exercising, weight loss, low fat diet, less carbohydrate diet, more of fibers in our diet like vegetables and fruits, less of smoking, less alcohol, less of sugar, especially refined sugars. Ultimately, weight reduction, BP reduction, and basically average sugar level reduction actually help us, reducing the incidence of heart diseases or any other cardiovascular disease. That is the most important thing which we should focus on.
Doctor, thank you for taking out the time early in the morning to lay that foundation for us. Okay, we're now going to go over to the testing side of this entire story. So, if you need to go to a lab and get a test, as it's now being recommended if you want to start at a young age, if you're 18, 19, what's the entire process? We have Dr. Sameer Bhati, he's the director of Star Imaging Path Labs. They have been around for 20 years now. Let's go over to them to understand more about this entire process. Dr. Bhati, tell us, let's just go to the first question. When it comes to the big changes between the previous requirements and now, one of the big things that our audience might remember is earlier you had to fast for 12 hours. Now that requirement has been done away with. What's the logic there? Is there new technology that doesn't need fasting? Just explain to us.
Right. So there is not any new technology because in lipid profile there are 6 or 7 parameters. So the LDL which we are targeting, which is the main culprit cholesterol level, and the HDL, the good cholesterol levels,
Right, we've just
are
explained
not
that.
altered by fasting. I mean that non-fasting sample can be taken, and that is quite good readings. I mean we can obtain to for our treatment management. Only triglyceride level in the blood increase after having a meal. And for the last few years, researchers have been looking at the benefit of non-fasting triglyceride levels, and the theory is that for the most of the day, levels are what they would be after meal. So a
Oh,
sample
okay.
taken without fasting could be useful. And earlier we're taking the fasting samples. I mean, if you have a family history of inherited cholesterol problems, then I think in that particular case, fasting samples would be preferable. But they are very few of the patients. So in that case, we can check the fasting samples. And in case, if we find abnormally high triglyceride level, so then we can take the fasting samples. But what I feel, a non-fasting test can be more comfortable for the individual and maybe safer for the people who are having the diabetes.
Right, it was a 12-hour window, I believe, so this will make it more accessible. But can you tell us, Doctor, your lab has been around for 20 years now. Before we look at the new guidelines, just tell us, this particular set of tests, what was the most common demographic that was coming in for it?
Yeah, so what we have noticed, this is an underutilized test parameter.
Okay.
So individual in their 40s and 50s are getting themselves screened, and very few in their 30s. Only and only chronic patients who already having some heart or stroke issues or who are already on some medications. But I don't think so. This test is being used for preventive purpose.
So, doctor, they say now that you can start at the age of 18. I believe one article actually said that if you're old enough to write a CV, you're old enough to get this test. How do you see that change?
Yeah, so in India, what we have noticed because of our genetics, we get metabolic disease 10 years early. Heart attack comes 10 years early because of our, vessel structures. 50% of the heart attacks in India below the age of 50 and 20% of the heart attack below the age of 40, and other risk factors like diabetes, blood pressures comes in our population much early. This is a good scientific approach to managing dyslipidemia, high cholesterol, with a focus on managing dyslipidemia uh, as early as possible. And in that particular case, aggressive treatment can be done, and the high risk individual can be screened much early before we can say 80.
Can you just tell us, I know a lot of articles are also saying that you can start younger than 18 also, but 18 is kind of the minimum recommended age. So just tell us, how young can people actually start, especially if they do have a family history of this?
They can start at the age of 14 or 15.
Okay. So you're lowering it even further. Just tell us, doctor, before we let you go, because you're someone who's looking at the pricing all the time. We looked into the prices, of course, but I think it would mean more if it came from you. How accessible do you find these tests price-wise?
Yes. It's quite accessible nowadays. It is included in all the preventive health packages. And it is quite affordable as well. This sample, only a single blood sample can be collected from your office or from home, and this test is easily available in all government hospital and in small cities too. So it is quite accessible and affordable.
Doctor, thank you for joining us. Of all the stories that we do, this is the one that perhaps has the most impact on your health. Do get tested. If you're watching this right now, do get tested. Encourage your family members to get tested too. Of course, on TBC, we like to say be healthy, exercise. But more than that, go out today, get your test, understand your lipid profile. Coming up after the break, we're shifting altogether. We're taking our focus to real men and their real stories. The host who's going to be breaking down for us what he's come across in this season. We're just showing you the trailer right now. We're going to have Nikhil Taneja with us right here in studios.
Won't pay proudly.
Trump's campaign event where this person, the shooter, was standing on a rooftop with a rifle, but nobody intervened and engaged him, and that perhaps resulted in this firing incident, the assassination attempt on President Trump. Now, we have been told that Secret Service has already notified the FBI. The FBI teams and the other intelligence departments are already on ground. They have been instructed to investigate this case thoroughly. Till now, we don't know the identity of the shooter. We don't know where had he procured arms from, and what was the reason behind this assassination attempt, Kuhina.
Right.
But it is now the onus is on the government to come clean, also to come up with the findings which could satisfy Trump supporters, because there are various kind of theories, conspiracy that Trump supporters are talking about at this point in time, that this is deliberately being done to threaten Trump so that he should not continue running for the office of president. This has been deliberate.
Republicans. So such talks, such theories are being floated. So it's very important for America. It's very important for America as a country also to investigate this case thoroughly. In fact, Kohina, given the history of political violence in America, there was a failed attempt on President Ronald Reagan in 1981.
Right.
Then a Kennedy killing. His brother was also killed in 1968. So there has been this culture, and also, Kohina, let's not forget the gun culture in America, which is protected by the Second Amendment of Constitution, and perhaps is much talked about culture in the United States, that how 32% of Americans own guns and arms. So, that is also something which America has to, put in place. Because if the former presidents are not safe, if somebody who is a special service protectee is not safe,
right,
and then it raises a lot of concern about the safety of a normal American, ordinary American living in America.
After former President Donald Trump was targeted in an assassination attempt, leaving one dead, two fighting for their life. We have all the latest on this stunning development. Let's.
Let's take you now to stories that are taking place across the country and the globe. These are our news wraps. Let's go. As the monsoon season brings relief and chaos in parts of India, one essential item becoming indispensable, and we're going to show you a twist on it from Ashish Sawant, an innovator who's devised a unique couples umbrella. It comfortably accommodates two people, ensuring that no one is left out in the rain. Some romance in the rain too. The innovative umbrella features a handle split into two parts and an extended width, perfect for lovebirds. And a new study from the American Cancer Society reveals that nearly half of adult cancer deaths in the US could be prevented through lifestyle changes. We've been talking about that a lot on the show in our first segment too, with 40% of new cancer cases linked to modifiable risk factors. So daily choices is essentially what they're saying can make you significantly reduce your cancer risk. And we take you next to South Korea, that's stepping up its defense game. It's beginning the mass production of a low-cost laser weapon that has successfully shot down small drones during testing. The weapon is capable of shooting down drones for just $1.50 per shot. So it's low cost but high accuracy. We'll bring you more context on it later. And a new study establishes a two-way causal link between poverty and mental illnesses like schizophrenia and depression. Researchers used genetic data from large cohorts, and they actually found that poverty contributes, as one could expect, to possible mental health disorders, while certain conditions like ADHD also increase the likelihood of financial hardship. This breakthrough underscores the urgent need for targeted intervention. Remember, as we told you, it's a two-way link. Each is connected to the other, one is causing the other, and vice versa, according to this study. And our next story, one you have possibly maybe already received a teaser on. Novak Djokovic, hailed as the greatest tennis player of all time, But the 37-year-old 6-2, 6-2, 7-6 loss that we saw play out just 9 hours ago against the 21-year-old Carlos Alcaraz in the Wimbledon final could signal, as many are wondering, the end of the tennis golden period where you had three greats dominating the game. And it's been a particularly eventful few hours for the sports world. Spain had a happy few hours in particular, because apart from that win that we just told you about, they also clinched their fourth European Championship title, defeating England 2-1 in the Euro 2024 final. England was really hoping for this win. The victory marks Spain's fourth consecutive win in the tournament, and following Spain's championship victory over England in the European finals, the Euro finals, the English team is still searching. Their women's team has won, their men's team has not yet got this elusive trophy. And in the world of cricket, India securing a 4-1 series victory against Zimbabwe in the 5-match T20I series, winning the final match by 42 runs yesterday in Harare. A half-century from Sanju Samson and a 4-wicket haul that we saw from Mukesh Kumar. They both helped India beat Zimbabwe by 42 runs. The young men in blue completed a splendid turnaround after there was a fear when they lost the series opener against Zimbabwe. And next, for our person of interest. Today on the show, we're highlighting not just a person of interest, but a concept of interest. It was back in 23 when Yuva, which is a popular Gen Z-driven media organization, they introduced India's first chat show on positive masculinity. We'll talk a little bit more about what that means in a second, but it's called Be a Man Yaar. Last season was filled with vulnerable conversations. You had names like Nasiruddin Shah, Karan Johar, Vicky Kaushal. The show is now back with its second season, and its host Nikhil Taneja is actually with us. He says it's going to be about the humanity behind masculinity. But what does that actually mean, and who will we get to hear from this season? Take a look first at this teaser.
When my family was going through that, मैं उस कगार पे था जहाँ पे films भी छोड़ सकता था उस time. That was the time I used to cry a lot.
A woman is a human being as much as this man is. यही है fabulous.
I've gone to numerous companies asking for sponsorship, but I've been declined.
मेरे स्कार्स मेरे लिए मेरी प्राइड है. वो स्कार्स रहेंगे तो मुझे पता रहेगा कि हाँ मैंने ट्रांजिशन किया है.
मेल लोनलीनेस दुनिया के सबसे बड़े खतरों में है.
How do you respect a man who's not earning? How do you respect a man who's not getting up and going to work? The guy who's just lying down on a sofa and crying about his feelings.
Angry young man सिर्फ angry नहीं था, वो deeply hurt था.
अगर आपको रोना नहीं आता है तो जरूरी नहीं है, लेकिन अगर आता है तो छिप के रोने की जरूरत नहीं.
If you're not going to love yourself, how can you expect someone else to love you?
Be a man, yaar.
Be a man, yaar.
Be a man, yaar.
पर सबसे पहले be a human, यार.
Nikhil, what important, exciting content to start our Monday morning with. We're so happy you're actually starting the week with us here on the show, because we'll get to start with this very important conversation. Let me just tell our audiences, you're also the co-founder and chief of We Are Yuva. I wanted to give them that context. Let me start you, Nikhil, with a question that is possibly a question you had to answer a lot when you started this entire venture. What did you see as the need for this space?
First of all, thank you, Toya, for having me. And thank you for all the very kind things that you have said. So as you said that I run a company called Yuva, and as part of what we do, we go across the country and we do a lot of campus roadshows. So I have at this point been to over 150 campuses. I've been to IITs, IIMs, AIMS, NITs, NIFTs, so on and so forth. Met a lot of young people on ground, over 10,000 young people. And every single time we try to create a safe space for them to express themselves without judgment. We hear two things prominently. Among young women, we hear a lot about harassment. We hear how they're being objectified by society day in and day out. And among young men, we constantly hear about loneliness. We hear that there is no one who, I've heard things like they haven't gotten hugged in life, nobody said I love you to them. Their parents haven't given them any physical intimacy. And while women always speak of this sisterhood that they have that helps them survive in society, men constantly talk about not having any spaces to express their emotion. So that was really one of the key reasons that I felt like, can we create an online safe space for young men for them to feel a little less lonely. When they see iconic men on screen being expressive, being emotional, maybe they might also feel like they can do it too.
Can you tell me, because we told our audiences the theme almost is positive masculinity and has always been.
Yeah.
And you do have, so for example, in the US, you have a show called Man Enough, The Man Enough rather. And
Correct.
it's similar in the sense that it wants to create a positive space. But I want to ask you, and you kind of touched on this right now, when you're having these conversations in the Indian context with Indian men, are you seeing differences in the Western and the Indian approach to masculinity?
I think, first of all, I'm a huge fan of Justin Baldoni and Man Enough, and he is absolutely one of my inspirations. In fact, he gave a shout out to the show last year as well. But I feel like masculinity, unfortunately, has become toxic for everywhere in the world. I think patriarchy has been such an oppressive thing for everyone across centuries. Now we have a bit of an understanding how patriarchy oppresses women. After many centuries, we are starting to recognize the effects on that. Unfortunately, we don't still understand that patriarchy also affects the boys in our world and in our country. It asks boys to become men before they're ever allowed to be human. And I think that's an issue we don't even talk about much. I don't see that there's much of a difference in the West or in India. I feel like patriarchal standards are the same everywhere. There are gender norms everywhere. But in India, some of it sometimes get amplified, especially in fields like education. So you have boys who are told to be providers. You need to do engineering, you need to do medical, you need to be a lawyer. And you can't really ever do anything that seems like it could be nurturing to you. Whereas women, of course, have always been told that your role is that of a nurturer, and doing and education or providing may not be your thing. So I think gender norms start so early and stereotypes start so early that it becomes very difficult as people grow up, and especially as men grow up, for them to try to break out of it.
I want to ask you, Nikhil, a slightly tougher question. When you're having this conversation with us right now, some of the words you're using, for example, patriarchy, earlier we talked about the concept of toxic masculinity. I do know that there is a certain, not to put them in a box, but there may be a certain age group of men whose ears automatically close. Let's say men and women, because I know women who are of that age group too, who they might hear words like that and automatically say, this is either a liberal conversation, too young people's conversation. So I do want to ask you, because you do have older guests. We just saw Javed Saab on your show right now for the new season. You've had Nasiruddin Shah. How do you approach these topics when you're talking to, I don't want to put them in a box again, but that generation?
No, I absolutely, I hear you and I agree with you. To explain this concept, I use these terms, but on the show, for example, none of these terms even exist beyond a point of time. The show is about emotion. It's about vulnerability. It is about feeling. It's not so much about opinion. So in fact, we have 3-hour conversations with every guest. We only put about an hour of that conversation out. And that hour is typically the guest being vulnerable, the guest being honest, the guest being raw. We try to go beyond their ideas about masculinity, their ideas about gender, but really about how it has affected them and about the emotion they have because of gender. So I do recognize that this is a conversation that people switch off about, because some of it has been also weaponized. It has been used angrily online by a lot of people who are sometimes anti-women, sometimes they believe that this conversation is anti-men. On the other hand, our show is really about empathy. It actually tries to tap into the humanity of men. So we try very hard to stay away from words, but try to really focus on emotion.
I want to ask you, Nikhil, when you were saying, that spaces don't exist for men to have these conversations. One of the arguments I see, a counter argument that I see a lot of people make, is that certain spaces like sports have always been there for men to develop a relationship with each other, and that relationship often allows for competition in a way that women aren't naturally taught to cultivate. But I just want to ask you, when you create a space like this, what do you want to see? Because you obviously want to see more of such conversations, but what do you want to see in general more from the men around you? And I'm talking about young and old.
See, you're absolutely right. I feel like, two men talking is one of the biggest tropes, of the podcast world. You can't see, I have yet to see enough podcasts about women even hosting or talking, and then this one is another chat show where there is like 2 men talking. So I do understand the tropiness of it. I do understand that men do get tons and tons of opportunities, they have a lot of privilege, they have many outlets of expressing themselves, but the thing that they miss out on is are outlets where they are able to be emotional. And I feel like that's a very big difference. Like I've always felt like men can go to war for each other, but they can't cry in front of each other. Have you I can't imagine a man really like losing themselves in front of another man and asking for a hug. Something as simple as a hug is sometimes, you see how gendered hugs are? When a man holds his mother, or holds, a female partner, the hug itself is all encompassing. It's like, it fills you in. But when men hug each other, there's always like this tap on the back of the,
the side pat.
It's always like this awkward thing that, hey, let's get over with this, cool, we are men, we're cool. We don't need to show emotion and empathy. We need to just stay a little distant from it. So sports, in fact, is one of the areas where men are able to, again, come closer to each other. And yet, we see when, for example, in this World Cup, it was so beautiful to see so many men cry. One of my favorite things about the World Cup this year was every man kind of just letting loose. Rohit Sharma on the ground in tears, everyone else watching, there was real emotion. And I wish we were able to express that as a country a lot more. I wish we were able to express that in our lives a lot more. And that's what this show is really trying to do. We're trying to create these spaces where we say that it's okay to talk about emotion, it's okay to cry, it's okay to have like encompassing hugs. I've hugged every guest on the show and I've tried to hold that hug in for a little while.
You were talking about the World Cup, and there's so much footage of all the cricketers kissing each other on the faces. And I was actually reading a lot of Twitter users, ex-users, rather saying, wow, it's so rare to see this kind of stuff. So I totally agree with you, and it is very, very beautiful. Let me just ask you, Nikhil, one of the guests you had, I just thought it was done so beautifully. You had Karthik Aaryan, and let me just tell our audiences that episode is already out. And Karthik Aaryan is someone who, in a lot of parts of the internet, people have said, yo, this film you did, it could be looked at as sexist. And you had a really refreshing way of tackling that. You took it head on. You asked him to talk about the goods of being a woman too, because in Pyar Ka Panchnama, there's that famous line where he talks about all the things that are wrong. How do you, just tell us, how do you end up, when you have guests, how do you end up approaching topics like this without, you don't want to offend anyone, they come from their place where they think they're correct, but it's an important question. So how do you balance that?
Yeah. I'm very honest with everyone who comes on the show. I tell them very much in advance, this is what I'm going to be tackling. I don't tell them questions, but I do tell them themes. I try to create a place, again, of trust. Safe space as a word and as a phrase is so important to me, because I feel like, especially, unfortunately, journalism, I've come from a journalism background. I used to be in Hindustan Times. I was a media reporter myself. And I feel like, almost all journalism spaces when it comes to entertainment have become so sensational. Everyone's always trying to look for that gotcha moment. Whereas, in our space, we try to do this with a little bit of respect. We try to keep a little bit of dignity around it. And at the same time, try to make everyone comfortable. It's never done in a way where I'm just trying to get people to say something controversial and then I put it out. In fact, if you see that even when we put out the clips, we don't actually put out a lot of the hard stuff that people have said. We let that be for the episode. We only put out themes and we let people come in and see some of the harder stuff. Some of the, things that people have said in the moments of most vulnerability. Because we don't, again, want to sensationalize that. We don't want people to be like, oh, wow, look at this one, great phrase that this person has said, so that all headlines can pick it up. Come to the episode, see the context in which it is being said, and you'll realize that the conversation is very respectful and very, hopefully, with a little bit of grace and a little bit of dignity.
Nikhil, I want to ask you lastly, again, maybe this is a slightly tough question, but the guests that you have on the show, of course, they know that they're coming to do this. They know they're coming to have a soft conversation with you. But I want to ask you, if you had to tell our audience members, our TBC family, how to have conversations like this with men in their life, even for the men who are watching, how they can have more of these conversations. Obviously, actors know they're going to come there, they're going to open up, but what are your tips for the everyman?
I absolutely love this question, and thank you for asking this, because I actually get asked this question a lot, especially in campuses. A lot of students ask me this question because they say that, we do want to express, but, we fear judgment. We don't know how to talk about our feelings with other people, because anytime we do it, we sometimes get shamed for it. Sometimes we get told that, you are not really being, man, you're not being macho by actually expressing yourself. So the advice that I've always given is, don't be the man who wants to talk first, try to be the man who listens first. You know, if you want to create safe spaces around you, you need to initiate that safe space by going to another man in your life and just being the person who listens. And if you are able to do that, and that's why I feel also our show kind of works, because you'll see a lot of the show is just me listening. It's me not interrupting anyone until they finished a thought. Even if that thought goes on for 5 minutes, I keep quiet. I want everyone to be able to fully, completely be able to express
Nikhil,
themselves.
I'm just
And I feel
interrupting
like,
you for a
in a
second
world
to
where
ask you.
everyone has something
Just
to
going to
say.
stop you for a second. A lot of the men I know will be very open with their girlfriends or their partners. They can do that easily. You know, so I just want to ask you, when they already have that, how do we show them that even this could be a great, you know, even talking to your fellow men about something that seems too sentimental, that could be the right road to go down?
No, you're absolutely right again, Toya. I feel like, unfortunately, men understand that it's okay for us to express in front of emotion, because that's what we have seen with our mothers. Our mothers are the one who show us empathy when we're growing up, and our fathers are always the ones who kind of are, you know, a little bit stuck up, a little bit distant, because that's what they have been taught. So it's nobody's really fault. Patriarchy has made sure that men have always remained stiff and women have taken the emotional burden of creating spaces for men. And our show is trying to change that a little bit. We are saying that, you know, you don't really have to rely only on the women in your lives. And I think it's unfair to women to always take the emotional burden of listening to the men. And men who are feeling lonely are always speaking about it, but not creating these spaces among themselves. And that's what we want to do. Go to a fellow man, start being the listener first. In a world where everyone has something to say, try to be the person who listens, and I promise you that your fellow man is then going to create the same space for you. Everyone's afraid of a space like that because of judgment. But if you create a judgment-free space, they are going to reciprocate, and you will see some of your closest friends using that space, where earlier, unfortunately, it only takes alcohol for men to express among other men. I feel like we require non-alcoholic, sober spaces for men to get emotional with each other.
Nikhil, you've done that. You've created that. And I'm so happy you're the flag bearer of this. Thank you so much for joining us on the show, for taking out time on a Monday morning and giving us this really beautiful, really positive message to start our entire week with. Thank you.
That really means a lot, Toya. Thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you for joining us. Okay, let's move on now. Let's take you, our audiences, after that gorgeous, gorgeous conversation where we felt you got to open up a little, even just listening to that. Let's take you now to a different story altogether. We're taking you up to Kashmir. India's globally known as and for its wide range of medicinally significant plants, Kashmir is slowly becoming part of India's purple revolution, with farmers switching to more rewarding lavender crops. And our colleague is Shanwani on the ground, bringing you this ground report, traveling to a lavender farm in South Kashmir to get us this entire story. Take a look.
Nested between picturesque valley, this lavender farm in Anantnag district is becoming a face of India's purple revolution. The Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir is perceived as the hub of medicinal plants. With fertile soil at disposal, many farmers across Kashmir are switching to planting lavender due to its high demand and medicinal values. Lavender oil sells for at least 12,000 per litre and is the main commodity here. Other popular products include medicines, essence sticks, soaps and air fresheners that are also made from this plant. The government of Jammu and Kashmir is working on involving the unemployed youth of the valley to start lavender farms across various districts of the valley.
ये पर्पल रेवोल्यूशन एक लिए लोगों के लिए और नए खास करके पढ़े लिखे नौजवानों के लिए बहुत फ़ायदेमंद चीज़ है। और इस बार जो हमने लेवेंडर के साथ साथ हम बल्गेरियन रोज़ भी यहाँ करते हैं। बल्गेरियन रोज़ के साथ हमने नए नए वैरायटीज़ यहाँ इंट्रोड्यूस किए हैं। इसमें बहुत फ़ायदे हैं, लोग जुड़ रहे हैं हमारे साथ। बहुत सारे युवा जो नई पीढ़ी है वो रजिस्ट्रेशन करके, इनके पास ज़मीन अवेलेबल है, ऑर्गेनिक ज़मीन है, फर्टिलाइजर ज़मीन है। और कुछ ऐसे भी लैंड है जो अनड्यूलेटेड है, मतलब लोगों ने इसको मतलब छोड़ दिया, अपने दिमाग से छोड़ दिया कि ये ज़मीन किसी काम के नहीं है। ये लेवेंडर जो है ये ड्राफ्ट रेजिस्टेंट है। तो युवा की बात है, युवा पूरी तरह से एक ही क्रॉप नहीं लगाते आज, कि हमारे एरिया में एज़ पर द एक्सपीरियंस हमने मतलब बहुत सारे एरियाओं में हमने विज़िट किया है, वहाँ मेडिसिनल भी इसके साथ लगाती है। ये बल्गेरियन रोज़ भी कुछ कुछ लगाते हैं। मतलब बहुत शौक़ है यहाँ के जो नए युवा के लोग हैं, नए युवा पीढ़ी के लोग हैं।
Lavender farms also present a picturesque look which has the potential of attracting tourists. This is also considered to be a low-maintenance crop and blossoms for 15 years. The Ministry of Science and Technology, while aiming to promote the indigenous aromatic crop-based agroeconomy through the Aroma Mission, has now trained more than 44,000 people, and farmers have made substantial fortunes. According to experts, Kashmir Valley has perfect conditions for lavender cultivation. This is also helping to generate rural employment while helping in blossoming India's Purple Revolution.
This is a picture of India's Purple Revolution in Kashmir. The smell here and the aroma here is really therapeutic. These are the lavender plants cultivated in south of Kashmir, which is slowly gaining popularity among farmers. 1 liter of oil cultivated from these lavender plants costs you around 12,000 rupees. And what is more interesting is that the youngsters in Kashmir are slowly starting to pick up this cultivation, which doesn't need much of the human interference. It grows slowly, doesn't need much fertilizers, and this is something which is becoming the face of India's Purple Revolution. These are not only used in medicines, but also this has several properties, and every day you go to buy your room freshener, remember, this is where possibly your lavender perfumes oil has come from, and this is what is spreading magic in your rooms or in your therapeutic massages.
Let's take you now to the big event of the weekend. Anant Ambani and Radika Merchant's Lagna Vidhi ceremony, the pre-wedding event before their fairas, had everything, and we're going to walk you through that to the actual wedding ceremonies. From Priyanka Chopra Jonas and Ranveer Singh dancing the night away to Salman Khan getting mobbed, all the guests who were in attendance, take a look.
Amani and Radika Merchant's Lagna Vidhi ceremony is a night we'll remember for months to come. And we're not just talking about the grandeur and opulence of the whole function, but these moments right here will be remembered. Desi girl Priyanka Chopra Jonas heating up the dance floor with her oh so good moves with hubby Nick Jonas, Isha and Akash Ambani. Megastar Rajnikant busting some moves and getting the party started. King Khan SRK pulling his wife close as they posed for the photo ops. Salman Khan being the superstar even in a sea of superstars with guests rushing to see him. Deepika Padukone making a royal entry in a stunning red anarkali suit. DP greeting Rajnikant and his family. And of course Ranveer Singh being Ranveer Singh. We're starstruck. What about you guys?
Let's talk a little bit now about clothing. Radika Merchant looked like a quintessential Gujarati bride for her wedding. She wore a red and ivory Abujani and Sandeep Khosla ensemble. Take a look. This is a breakdown.
Radika Merchant's traditional Gujarati bride look was just magical. The Choti Bahu of the Ambani Parivar looked ethereal, and we are in awe. For her wedding with Anant Ambani, Radika wore a custom Abujani Sandeep Khosla ensemble that exuded royal vibes. Her attire was an intricate interpretation of Panetar, the Gujarati tradition of brides wearing red and white. The ivory Zardozi cutwork bridal ensemble consisted of a trailing ghagra layered with a second detachable trail, a 5-meter head veil and a tissue shoulder dupatta. The ghagra glittered with 3 borders of red, with the finest amalgamation of Nakshi, Sadi and Zardozi symmetrically hand-embroidered in intricate floral booties that were lavishly decorated with stones, sequins, tamba tikkis and a touch of red resham. The head veil featured a delicate jali and cutwork, while the detachable trail was a Zardozi marvel of 80 inches. The outfit was rounded off with a fully embroidered red shoulder dupatta that uplifted the silhouette with its maximal drama. Radika wore her Nani and mother's heritage jewellery with her bridal attire, which was earlier worn by her elder sister Anjali for her wedding. Moving on to her Vidai look, designed by Mehrotra. The color palette of this look featured different shades of red, yellow and gold. A tribute to India's timeless elegance, her lehenga featured multi-panelled Banarsi brocade in sunset hues. The exquisite blouse consisted of real gold karchobi work inspired by the traditional abho and the rich textile heritage of Kutch, Gujarat, echoing the artistry of the late 19th century. A veil with a lattice design on a beautiful shade of red completed the attire along with a Banarsi dupatta. Well, Radika Merchant was the perfect embodiment of a true Indian bride. What do you think of her looks?
And now we take you to more fashion, but this time the Amani fashionistas who styled and slayed rather with their impeccable royal fashion on Saturday night. But let's take a look at each of their different choices. So Neeta Ambani, Isha Ambani and Shloka Mehta. Let's take a look at everything they chose to wear.
Another day, another slay. That's the only way we can explain the ensembles of the fashionistas of the Ambani family for Anant and Radhika's blessing ceremony. We were eagerly waiting to see Isha Ambani's next fashion move. And there she was, looking like a Maharani in an elegant ivory lehenga and the most mind-blowing necklace with multiple chunky stones. Then we immediately noticed her diamond kamarband, bangles and yellow diamond ring. She looked so elegant with the pulled back hair. Neeta Ambani continued her streak with pretty pastels and chose a pink-toned ghagra set for the evening. She decked up with diamonds and emeralds from top to bottom and we just can't stop looking at her. Shloka Mehta mixed and matched different fabrics and materials for the occasion, resulting in this fabulous, edgy yet traditional look. She went for this stunning archival Manish Malhotra ensemble that included a contrasting skirt and top paired with a sleeveless long shrug secured with a fabric belt. She wore diamond accessories and went for an open hairstyle. Just enchanting. Now coming to the most anticipated look of the evening, the new Mrs. Radika Ambani. Radhika wore a custom Abujani Sandeep Khosla masterpiece made in collaboration with Indian artist and sculptor Jayashree Burman. The lehenga featured spellbinding detailing that made this piece unique.
Okay, and now let's go to one of the most interesting outfits. This is Radhika Merchant's attire. This was for the Shubh Ashirvad ceremony that she had, but it was, as we've already told you, Abujani Sandeep Khosla, but the design has been hand-painted on an Italian canvas by a contemporary Indian artist and sculptor. We don't want to tell you more. Take a look.
Radika Merchant's first evening as Mrs. Radika Ambani was all kinds of special for so many reasons. To celebrate their union and share their joy, the newlyweds families hosted a grand Shubh Ashirwad ceremony at the Geo World Convention Center. Like all their other festivities, this event too attracted stars from Bollywood, business and sports. But you already know that. We actually wanted to talk about Radhika's super special attire. It was a result of a unique collaboration between Abu Jani Sandeep Khosla and contemporary Indian artist and sculptor Jayashree Burman. To bring the artist's painting to life, the lehenga's 12 panels were hand-painted on a special Italian canvas. The lehenga featured the artist's quintessential mythical aesthetic, which also celebrated Anand's union with Radhika through special imageries. Then there is the fauna on the lehenga, which depicted Anand's fondness for animals. The craftsmanship also featured meticulous hand embroidery of real gold zardozi. Radika Merchant's aesthetic is truly special.
We are closing the show now with that last story. We hope that you've enjoyed today's TBC show with all of the information about how to get your heart checked, and then to a conversation where we hope you felt like you got to open your heart up a little. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
A campaign rally in Pennsylvania, former US President Donald Trump was hit by a bullet in his right ear, causing panic as blood smeared across his face. Now, despite the alarming scene, he defiantly raised his fist in the air, and the US Secret Service assured that the public of Trump's safety, confirming the shooter's death and the unfortunate loss of one audience member. Now, the global leaders united in condemning the act of violence. According to a US law enforcement official and a police officer present at the scenario, the shooter and positioned had themselves on a rooftop of a building adjacent to the venue where former President Donald Trump was hosting his rally.
I've been thoroughly briefed by all the agencies in the federal government as to the situation, based on what we know now. I have tried to get a hold of Donald. He's with his doctors.